Before we jump into today's topic, a quick disclaimer. The stories and data we share come from the states that we practice in and the experiences that we personally had, which can differ greatly across our country and certainly the globe. This is not a professional advice show. So let's get comfy and talk about death.
Hello and welcome to Mort Mike.
A down-to-earth discussion on death and dying.
I'm Brandy.
And I'm Red, and we're your scientific scholars this week.
Hey! In a fun continuation of last week's episode on whole body donation to science, we thought it'd be poignant to not just regurgitate facts and figures from our research, but ask a professional. He is versed in the field himself, and if you haven't listened to the last episode, Bequeath Your Body Part 1, I highly recommend you take a listen to that before this one, and just so you have a base of understanding of what we're going to talk about and the things that we already covered there. So now that 101 class is out of the way, we can get down to the nitty-gritty with today's special guest, Sunny. Hello, Sunny. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do that makes you such a wonderful resource for today's episode?
Yeah. Hey, Brandy, and hey, Red. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. So I am a research coordinator for one of the many organizations that does tissue and organ recovery in the United States. And so really, I just oversee a lot of the things that you associate with research, like bringing projects on board, setting up training for them, like getting the legal and regulatory requirements around for our legal team and our leadership to kind of execute. And I also help prepare abstracts and lead work groups and do a lot of different stuff. So I'm across a lot of stuff. I often jokingly refer to my job as Donation Support Plus. We just kind of make it happen. Like I said, I'm thrilled to be here today, so thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very excited for this episode and for you to be a part of it. So I thought we would get started with a kind of easier question, something to break the ice. So what's your favorite organ or organ system?
Man, it's funny because like looking at these questions and like thinking about what the real answer is, it's definitely the brain and nervous system. The reason for saying so, I have a background in neuroscience, and so that's part of it. But when I think about the brain, I think about how interesting and really like almost like terrifying it can be to think about the fact that everything we have ever been and like everything we are ever capable of being is like broken down to electrical signaling and like neurochemical transmission. And so like that's crazy to me that we just have like this, couple pound mass in our head that is our whole existence. And then like you move to like the peripheral or like, a little bit even outside the brain, like your nervous system, like you consider like your nerves and like how your hands and feet move and stuff. And like the amount of like cellular coordination that must take place. And really, I'm just like a how and why person. So I think that's just so fascinating. And that's why I think it's probably my favorite, just because it's so hard to understand, maybe.
I love that too. It's funny to think that we're piloted, this giant like flesh robot that we are is piloted by this little tiny thing up there.
Yeah, there's just like a ball of fat like sitting in your skull that drives you. And that's crazy. And we should all acknowledge that.
Absolutely.
I knew you were going to come on here and make me think too hard.
See, I was when I wrote this first sentence, the everything we are or could be, I was like, oh, Brandy's going to hate that.
Scary. I don't want to think about it.
It's widowy terrifying.
So scary. Okay. Well, anyways.
Yeah.
All right. So how did you end up in this field, and what kind of schooling and certifications did you need to get there?
Yeah, it's like going from a softball to like a 95-mile-an-hour pitch outside.
It's a weird experience.
It's hard to answer this question, but I'm a Nepo baby. So it's tough because I had a family member who worked at this organization, so they kind of got their foot in the door. I didn't have a whole bunch of clinical experience. I had volunteered some of my time during school, like in a morgue and in some labs. So somewhat that kind of thing, but really not much, and really just getting into tissue, and that's what I started in, and I did that for like a year and a half. Just really built a strong like basis in me that I think I still really go back to a lot, and think about the decision-making skills I had when I was in tissue, and like just really the fortitude you have to have, the things you see and go through, and like the experience you have with your teammates. And but that's not to say like I didn't have any experience. So like while I was in college, I helped run some research labs at our university, and I helped set up our kind of like the final course you take as a neuroscience student. So I helped run that lab. And then when it comes to like certifications, research certifications are so weird, and I'm trying to figure this out, right? Just like I'm new to this too, so I'm trying to like kind of navigate this as well. But like there's some tissue research certifications, and there's some like organ research certifications you can get on an individual level. But really, like if you look at it, following kind of, and I heard you guys mention like AATB, like following those standards is like really ultimately what you're supposed to do. I know it's really ultimately what you're supposed to do as like as a researcher, as a research coordinator, is really just make sure everyone, if you're taking organs, you follow AOPO, which is the Association of Organ Procurement Organizations, and what they lay out, and also OPTN, which is something transplant network, and they oversee a lot of organ stuff. Tissues AATV. But yeah, kind of answer this question is like I'm trying to figure out what would be most relevant like to us and what we do, and not just go spend a bunch of money like getting a certification that's just like an acronym on a email, So it's different.
Yeah.
I've noticed that with a lot of different, not just necessarily like tissue based programs, but a lot of programs in general that have like a lot of nonsense.
Yes.
Things that you can get certifications and accreditations in. And it's just like, well, to somebody else, like, oh, it probably sounds fancy and useful, but in reality, it's just you paid to play.
Yeah. You paid to put some letters after your name. And like, there are instances where that's okay, but like I really am searching for value with these things. So that's why I really am trying to do some research, like from an individual basis, like how can I build my skill set to continue building our program, and like what are the most valuable things I want to take away from those things. So yeah, it's tough. It's the certification world is I do not envy folks that have to like deal in that world and work within it at all.
Well, what would you say with those types of programs that you find yourself in and around? What are some of the largest milestone accomplishments that those programs have made?
Oh yeah, so this is a great. There are so many, and I didn't want to put too big of a magnifying glass on this, but I do want to break it down to a couple different projects I've read about recently from partners that we kind of share, and so. One, and I really think this kind of applies specifically to this podcast and like to a lot of people out there, and it's about suicide. And so we're learning a lot more about suicide as time goes on. It is unfortunate, but more people do kill themselves now than ever before. And so it's, at the same time that it's tragic, it's almost like it would be a tragedy not to examine these brains and understand the reasoning kind of behind maybe if there is a genetic or biological component to suicide. And so there's been a recent study that's come out from a national brain repository, but essentially what it explains is when they analyze the brains of people who took their lives via suicide and died via suicide, that those brains looked very, very genetically and biologically different from the brains of people who did not commit suicide. And so
really,
yeah. So it's there are transcriptic factors like with your RNA and gene regulation factors they were looking at. And honestly, and something I read that was really fascinating. I studied fruit flies in college a lot. Kind of a fun fact. And in these brains, you actually see that the expression of anger mimics that of like fruit flies in clinical testing under duress. So like,
oh my God.
Yeah. So there's some thought that like maybe there is a biological or background genealogical reason that people are more likely to commit suicide than other people. So that's really interesting and crazy and something big to think about. And kind of like on the other side of the world from brains, right? Like the pancreas. And so I think a lot of people know someone who like has diabetes or like was affected or is affected in some way by some kind of chronic pancreatic disorder like pancreatitis or something. And it's actually the Center for Medicaid Services came forward and said by 2030 that pancreatic diseases and related cancers would be the second leading cause of death in America.
I can believe that for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially obesity is on the rise, and that definitely has a huge effect on your pancreatic health. But really the thing I want to highlight is a program that we work with that has basically flipped pancreatic research on its head, which is not something you hear very typically about research. Like research is kind of the same way it is until there's a breakthrough. And this is kind of where we are with this, is that, if you're a living person and you want to get tested to see if you have biological markers for cancer, for pancreatic cancer, what they typically do is they take a sample of fat that is around your pancreas. The reason for this is like in a living person, it's very dangerous to biopsy. That's a gland, so like it could really mess you up. But they take these pieces of fat and they analyze those. So I think you can maybe already see where I'm going with this, that like it's adjacent to the pancreas and it's not the actual tissue. So these researchers, they've pulled pancreata from donors, and that's something that is new in the field is this donor research. And they have been processing them and finding out that fat that encapsulates the pancreas is actually not the best source of finding out if someone's going to get cancer or not. It needs to be pancreatic cells. So the last 25 years, we have studied just pancreatic adjacent cells. And now they're saying we need to study pancreatic cells and we need to figure out how. So it's pretty interesting. Like just those two projects have really pulled with the brains, with the suicide and with the pancreatic stuff, have really pulled a curtain away from a lot of these things for people. Like they really are seeing kind of the impact now. So yeah, those are the two that came to mind, and really like those are huge accomplishments. Like with suicide, kind of the biological breakdown, and with the pancreas stuff. So try not to keep it too high level, but like with the pancreas stuff, it's just I struggle with understanding how that all works. So truly fascinating stuff.
No, that makes
super
sense.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I worry about with this stuff all the time. I'm like, maybe I'm just talking like it's just nothing.
I'm in the donation sphere, but I don't do like the smart guy stuff, and so that actually
neither do I.
Sense
So
to me. Shut up. That actually makes sense to me. The pancreas stuff, the brain stuff was definitely easier to follow, but the pancreatic stuff, it actually kind of made sense when you said it like that.
But that's so cool to hear from, because like I would say, God, it's such a high amount of the people that, I see like at the funeral home, like have diabetes. And we do see a huge increase in suicide, especially like COVID didn't help anything. So like for those being some of like the leading causes of death in America, especially, like that is like incredible to hear that we might be heading in a different trajectory for those numbers,
Yeah, and I think even more, it's even more powerful and impactful, I think, because donors are leading the way with this. And I don't think people thought 20 years ago that research from organ and tissue donors would be leading the medical field. So that's a huge accomplishment as well for tissue banks, organ banks all across the United States, is that the research is increasing, and families and donors are really a big part of that. And so, a tremendous debt of gratitude is paid to those folks that sign up to be on these research lists and for these projects. And so it's great all around. We've seen more of it recently, and it's awesome.
I love that. So then what does a day in the life look like for you?
Well, it's a lot of upkeep. Yeah. So I wish my job was like as fun as exciting as it used to be. And like I say, fun and exciting, like with the correct sense of morbidity to it. But I definitely, in tissue, there is a different sense of like you are hands-on with your donors. You have that has an effect on you. You feel close to the gift constantly. You're constantly reminded of your mission. But with my daily life now, it's a lot of upkeep. So it's a lot of sending emails and doing policy review, answering questions on cases. That happens a lot. During the day, someone might message me and say, hey, Sonny, we have this question. Should we allocate this organ to this person? if it has this disease. And so, I can answer those questions because I'm really, I communicate with our researchers a lot, so I know them even on a better level than kind of their screening questions, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I kind of know what they want to an extent. And I'm, like I said, at kind of the top of the cast, or at the top of my time, I guess, I make those training documents. I help lead work groups. We have a couple work groups we're working on right now just to really get things into policy, make sure things work well with our research program. I've recently started doing a lot of public speaking for my organization, and doing that outreach with our research program. And I think that's hugely important, just getting the word out and really letting people ruminate on important things. But yeah, I just both of you, I just want this to be talked about. I want people to know, I want them to have all the knowledge. So that's a day in the life. It's a lot of computer work, but I do love getting on site and helping whenever I can with these cases. So
how is that for you, having transitioned into the public speaking sphere? Because I know a lot of people, if that's not what you're used to and now that's what you do, that there could be a learning curve there, I'm sure.
Yeah, it has been. I'll say that a quote that really helped me, and maybe it's corny, is fear is the price of admission. And so I really stick to my guns with that quote. I think about it all the time before I publicly speak, is you could be doing anything today, but the fear of doing this isn't worth not doing it, and not getting over it and not overcoming it. And so, but I have always been kind of a good public speaker. I gave a speech at my graduation to a bunch of folks. I didn't really even feel any way about that because I thought, I know all of these people, who cares? And so
right.
It's been a bigger transition, going in front of universities or whatever, talking about this. But I'm really just, I love good questions and I love discussion. So that helps me. I do Q&As and stuff like that. And just really being able to listen to people and hear what they have to say, and so many people have good questions that people just don't take a second to listen to them. Mm-hmm. I love doing that, and so that's maybe there's my soapbox a little bit about the public speaking, but yeah, I do enjoy it. It is a lot of fun being able to get all these different perspectives on what all of us do.
Wonderful. How many donors would you say go through some types of these research every year?
That's a good question too. It's kind of hard to say. I would say every donor family gets the right and the permission to deny research and education authorization, even aside from whatever registry you're on, whatever lists you've signed up for. Your family gets the final say about research and education. And so, first and foremost, if we have authorization, we are really going to go out of our way to make sure we can find a placement for something for research. But I would say, and this number has gone drastically up in the last couple of years, but I'd say, 75 to 80% of all of our donors are having all of our organ donors are having some kind of research done with their tissues or with urine or with blood. Mm-hmm. And tissue donors, it's probably more 10 to 20%, but the volume is so much higher. So that's something to consider as well. With organ, you might do, a couple hundred, but with tissue where we are, you're going to do 2,000 donors, or you're going to do 2,000 recoveries. So it's a case of volume, and it's a case of just sample size. So really it's kind of boils down to that.
And also research projects, because
yes,
in tissue, there are a lot less available research projects than in organs, where they have tons and tons of projects to pick from.
Yes, agreed. Our organ department has many, many, many more projects, and it really does just go down to what are people studying. And what people are studying are the brain in the tissue side, and they're looking at all of the transplantable organs. So it really is tough. We try and do as much tissue research as we can. I heard you guys talking about the disaster relief dogs or some kind of task force relief dogs. Mm-hmm. That's great. I think that is a wonderful way to get families involved. That is something that is not even a huge question to ask, but a lot of people will say, wow, look at the impact of that. So, I think that's really crucial and really important. But I'd say in general, over 50% of all of our donors total probably have some kind of research.
Oh, wow. I mean, what would you say is the reason for the uptick in the last few years for the influx of research that has been able to happen? I mean, if you weren't having as many donors before, what was that turning point?
Yeah, now would be where like I'd have the Stone Cold music come on and I'd say it was me.
Yeah.
No.
Sonny started in that position and that was it.
Yeah, I really struggle to not like I want to be humble about this because there's so many more people involved than just me. But I think just getting me involved with it and putting someone in front of the research that is oddly passionate. I have like an extreme amount of passion for anything I set my mind to, especially about what we do. And I'm really driven. So when I really want something, I get it done. And I think both of those things, I've just kind of like choke held everyone into position and said like, we're going to do this and we're going to make it work the right way. And so, but it's been many things. We've increased our staffing. Like I said, we've been more forward facing with our research. So we've really told people the purpose and the reasoning, and we've gotten involved in donor family events but it's been a lot of things. Just really turning it and making it visible and making it a thing that everybody knows about has been a huge help.
I was going to say, if there's going to be a place to toot your horn, it's definitely here and now.
Yeah. Okay, then I did enough horn tooting. But no, I really in all these situations I always turn it back on our people. Like it's Brandy could tell you, but just like it's the people. Like build me up, and it's crazy how great they are. We have troubles and stuff, but really the thing that backs us all up is that commonality about what we all do. So we all just understand each other. So it's great.
So of all the calls that you get from researchers, what percentage would you say have to be turned away? And then what projects do you tend to favor?
So I probably turn away less than maybe 20 or 30% of our projects, like 2 or 3 out of 10. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds crazy, but like it's kind of true. Like I said about institutionalizing like the chokehold to get people to do what we need to do. It's really like just trying to bring on as many things as we can that are manageable. And so any like project where for a long time, we didn't have any projects that supported a pancreatic need. And so I just identified a couple programs locally that looked like they could support that and then reached out and kind of got it set up. But on the other end of the spectrum, like when people reach out to me, I'm really looking for projects that are going to have a huge effect on transplant and or patient outcomes that will not have a huge effect on like consumerism or like pharmacological like money making, if that makes sense. So like when a project comes to us, the perfect project for me would be like someone coming and saying, like on the organ side, coming and saying, we want hearts that are not safe for transplant to analyze them to see if there's a way we could transplant them if we did something else. And I'd go, oh, that sounds great. Like, I want to get you guys on board immediately. We go through the legal framework and all that stuff. And pending all that, like, we'd get to the point where we'd start giving them some hearts. Kind of like a worst case scenario is when a team reaches out and they say, well, we're a very large like for-profit entity that wants to do device creation. So they want to create a medical device, or they want to create some kind of drug or pharmacological solution that is going to make a ton of money on the backbones of things that do not generate money, and then also possibly put a strain on those groups of people, like pharmacologically or otherwise. Like, things should just be available. You shouldn't have to pay millions of dollars or thousands of dollars, to like get your insulin or something like that. So we really try and support projects that are like keep the public interest in mind like that, and that are going to keep transplant in mind as well.
Yeah, screw late stage capitalism.
Yeah, that's what, a nice way to say it. No. I agree though. Like, it's crazy the amount of money that is made in the medical industry, and really like we will not be a part of that. We don't need to be. Donors don't need to generate things like that. They can generate things that are good for a nonprofit field without profit, and it makes a lot of sense. So we just don't need those for-profit entities like that.
What would you say some of the bigger challenges in your field that you're facing at this time?
Oh man, there are a couple things. I think one thing that everybody talks about with tissue and organ donation are the bad actors, the people you hear about, and I think that's something that for a long time and really had a negative effect when I started with the research stuff was places in the news selling body parts without families knowing about what they were going towards, or
yes.
funeral home. Yes, exactly. You guys talked about it, I think, and those situations come up. But the thing is all of that is removed with proper vetting, proper auditing, and proper on-site visits. And so that's what I do a lot with our partners in our research programs. Is if they work with us, I'm going to visit you, and I'm going to come out there and I'm going to audit your process, and I'm going to make sure that whatever you tell me and whatever I tell my staff to tell the family is completely 100% accurate, crystal clear. And I think away from that a little bit, like away from the spotlight and more like kind of technical, I think a lack of control samples nationwide is cropping up, and I think it's going to continue to keep cropping up. And when I say like control, I mean, we just talked about this with pancreatic diseases, like obesity's on the rise. Well, not just obesity's on the rise, but like heart disease, neuroaffective disorders like autism, spectrum disorder, schizophrenia, dementia, Alzheimer's are all on the rise. And so what we continue to see is a decline in folks who are dying that are relatively healthy, and an increase in people dying who are relatively unhealthy and have diseases. And so when those numbers start to kind of fluctuate, you get away from having these samples that you can compare things to. If you're drinking, if you're trying Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi and you don't have a water as your control group, like, you're doing something wrong. And so that's what all these researchers need, is that healthy control group. And it's becoming rarer and rarer and rarer to have a neurotypical person or have someone who doesn't suffer from, some kind of obesity or diabetes or, vascular peripheral disease or something like that. So, those two things I would say have a huge effect on us.
I really would have never thought about that being an issue. Obviously it's an issue, but like that's crazy to think about.
So we've talked a lot about the programs that happen at our facility, but can you tell us about the process of donating whole body to a different program and how you help facilitate that?
Yeah, definitely. From our perspective, or from my perspective, working, with an organ procurement organization, mostly I just align the people. And so that's a huge part of my job. And I love doing it, is just communication. And so, many times I'll get like an email or a phone call or a voicemail or something that's from a family that has been turned down for donation already because of, Alzheimer's and dementia is a rule out for donation. A lot of people would probably be surprised to hear that. But there's some studies that suggest that it can be transmittable. I know that's also crazy, but don't get me on my soapbox about that, because that's also based on really old research that might or might not be true. So don't get me started on that. But since we don't do whole body, largely what I do is connect people to the programs that do. So we have a couple different medical schools in our state, and we're lucky for that we have a huge availability of these programs, to even kind of fluctuate when they are and are not accepting whole body donors. But if all else fails, and I can probably actually give them a quote, because they're a small plug, because they're a national agency, but Science Care Direct is a national whole body program. And when everything else fails for me, when our local programs can't help a family, when our local medical schools, or when a researcher can't, I turn to Science Care Direct, because they deal with national whole body donations. So they are really the experts of those folks who have not been helped yet and have not been gotten to the next step. And so, but yeah, largely it's just communicating with them. Just, if I can be a steward to get you to the next person who can help you, that's what I'm going to do. And that's my goal with a lot of whole body donors and the people that want to do that.
That's fantastic too, because especially as a family that's just trying to do good with all this, they don't have those resources. So being able to network for them like that is so needed. Yeah, and it's for them, it would probably be a lengthy Google search and probably a couple emails and phone calls, but you call me and I have it all on my list. And so it's literally instantaneous. And so it's such a good process. And I've met so many donor families that are so grateful for these opportunities to be able to make something out of this, the most horrible day of your life, being able to make something out of it. So whole body programs are wonderful. I could plug them all day. They're awesome. So since I have a morbid curiosity, if you couldn't tell from the last episode, I really have to ask this. Have you ever heard of or encountered a body broker personally?
Yeah, so that's interesting. No, I haven't experienced one first person for sure. A lot of that is probably because of, like I kind of mentioned before, like how strongly I vet people. And so I'm not just like Googling your organization. I'm not just Googling you. I'm calling the people I have worked with, the people that have worked with you, different universities that you say you're affiliated to. I'm calling their departments to make sure that you are a good person. And so I don't have any experience with those people because I think I have a good nose for them, first of all. Maybe they have emailed me, but maybe I instantly went, oh no, we don't want to do that. And so maybe that has happened, but like for the most part, I can vet out any of those kind of what I would consider less than non-scrupulous people, like before we even get to the point where I'm like, oh, this could be a bad thing. I will say, like, I do have experience kind of secondhand with them because I have colleagues all over the United States. And so I'm very, very familiar with a couple recent incidents that a couple different organizations were implicated with. And it really does just come down to doing your due diligence. You have to be a good investigator. Like, you almost develop skills like doing the research job that I do that, like, you would never develop anywhere else. Like, you have to be able to put on that PI hat for a little bit and go, I have to ask some tough questions and, like, send some really, difficult emails sometimes. And I think at the end of the day, when, a program or an organization runs up against that and they have had that happen where, they didn't even know something bad was happening, maybe I'm a little biased, but I think it could have been caught. I think a lot of these situations, they don't audit folks. I do like I said, yearly on-site visits with most, if not all, of our researchers. The only ones I wouldn't would be like university affiliations where they have their own audit process, but definitely anybody that doesn't have a university affiliation, we are doing on-site audits with. So it's, it's tough. The bad actors do make it bad for all of us. So it's incredibly difficult.
I think that speaks a lot to like the integrity of your program, though, and of course yourself, that you really haven't had to deal with any of these before. Like, that's not even on your radar because of how like upstanding you guys are.
I really try. I know, like, research in general, just it's hard to understand. You're already dealing with a death. You're already answering all these questions about organ donation and tissue donation and this, that, and the other thing. And so I really think like families should be confident when they do research with us. They should be confident that in 20 years they can call us and we could tell them anything and everything that happened with their loved one's tissue or organ. So I take a lot of pride in that fact. And thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Okay. I have one last question.
Oh no, off-script questions.
Secret question.
Secret question.
The final gauntlet.
Oh no. Okay.
I made sure that this one was not sent to you.
That this one stayed off. Okay.
Because
okay.
I had to. Tell me I want to hear your weirdest, wildest donor story. I want you to pull something from the depths of being a tissue tech and tell me about your weirdest night.
Weirdest night. What's funny is, maybe this is TMI, but I just restarted therapy today. Shouts out to me getting my mental health back in check. But that is something we talked about. She's like, you that job, that's a lot of trauma. And I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. God, and all of this is just giving me time to think. I think maybe I'll give two, and then we can decide like which one would be like better or something, but I kind of have two in mind.
Yeah, just go for it.
But one is, and it's something we don't deal with a lot, but is pregnant donors. And so, like, maybe this is like way too graphic or whatever, but like, if someone passes away, a woman or someone who's bearing a child passes away, doesn't need to be a woman, but if they pass away and they have a child in them, they can still be a tissue donor. And that is an extremely sensitive thing for many people, especially like miscarriages and things like that. We had a case that this same exact thing happened, where the mother came in and she had suffered from some kind of, pre-birth ailment and had passed away, and so had her baby. And in those moments when you're there as a tissue procurement specialist and you're looking at this authorization and you see that this woman signed her name and said she wanted to be a registered donor, like we would be doing a disservice to her if we did not make her a tissue donor.
And so, on top of that, we're asking the family too.
Yes.
And if the family's like, yeah, that's what we want. And
exactly.
So then we all stand in that room looking at this woman and just needing to carry out essentially her final wishes.
Yep, exactly. And that is what I would always go back to is like, as many, like, can I swear?
Oh yeah.
Okay, as many all right. Like as many like fucked up things as you see, like it definitely does always draw you back that like, okay, we are like, for me, I am a registered donor. If I have a way of finding out after I die that I die and someone didn't make me a tissue or organ donor because it was their choice and it was actually them just going against my choice, I'll be pissed as hell, dog. I will haunt the fuck out of them.
Yeah.
Like for as long as I can. But that happened, and that's really difficult. Like I wasn't a father at that point, and so I had different feelings about it, I think, than some other people, but just really sensitive for that regard. And then the second one, and this is one like, man, there really are like two more I could talk about, but I'm really just gonna stop with the next one. We had a gentleman come in, and Brandy knows exactly which case I'm talking about. It was within probably my first 2 or 3 weeks starting at this place, and
so you were just a baby.
I
had tissue tech, and I was like, oh no.
I had barely seen donors. I had barely been around dead people outside of like a funeral home or morgue or something like that. I had not seen a lot of trauma. So we had this individual come in that was a suicide from self-inflicted like stab wounds.
Oh my God.
But it wasn't like what you think. He started with his arms, but he went the long way, and he started at his wrist and went to his elbow,
Holy shit.
basically down to his bone on his left hand. And then that didn't do the job because he was so hopped up on painkillers and stuff and other items that were in his toxicology that he then went to his right arm and started doing the same thing. That also didn't put him out, so he then called an ambulance and told them, you need to get someone over here, and he sliced his own throat.
Oh my God.
The ambulance gets there, and they are able to trach him through the open hole that he has created by slicing his own throat.
It was insane.
So I am in the OR, setting up, doing my own thing, listening to music, jamming, just getting in the mood for a regular day. None the wiser. I was Tinkerbell I was Peter Pan before Tinkerbell showed up, and Brandy walked over, opened the door, and said, I barely even knew her at this point. Like, it was truly just like an act of good faith from one person trying to preserve another person's sanity. And she's like, you are going to want to take it easy. Like, if you don't, basically just explaining kind of what happened. And I walked in, and I just remember thinking, like, holy shit. Like, this is my second week. Like, what am I going to see here? And
what am I getting
It's
into?
crazy because it almost never got worse than that. So, like, it's almost like within 2 weeks, I was like, all right, I've seen, like, the worst thing I could ever see. It's probably not going to get much worse.
He took it like a champ, too. I was really proud. He, like, came over and was like, oh, yeah, that seems fine. And me and our other coworker was
I scared you guys.
We were looking at each other because I came from the morgue, so I'd seen some stuff. Our other coworker had come from the ER, so he'd seen some stuff.
Yeah.
And we were both like, our little lab boy doesn't care.
It
All
probably
right,
was
he's in. We were like,
crazy
that's
moment.
it. That's it. He's here.
Hearing about it in retrospect right now, that feels good. That was like the, okay, he can hang moment. Like,
yeah, we were like, oh yeah, he's got
cool.
it. But it was truly one of the craziest ways to die. And so they had gotten him almost to the OR. He made it all the way to the hospital, intubated through his neck hole that he created.
Yep.
To do experimental surgery, and then he unfortunately passed away.
They got Rosk on him. Yeah, they got him back in the ambulance, which is a feat of modern medicine that I could not even explain. Like, I don't even know.
That was one of the craziest ones for me, too, and I'll never forget it.
No, that one...
Honestly...
No.
Holy shit, dude. That's even honestly probably like tops some of the stories that I have. Like that's
well, because we're seeing people from all over the state, and it can be anything. It can be a motor vehicle accident. We're getting referrals from the morgues, the counties and everything for their deaths, which are, overdoses and accidents and homicides. And we see homicides sometimes. Like, it's crazy, the things that come through.
Yeah, wow, and good on you, mate. First
Sticking
month
in.
on the job.
Yeah, I was at a point with my professional life that if it didn't work out, we were going to have a laundry list of problems. So we were going to make it work regardless.
Well, it really, truly has been a blast and a privilege to have you on Mort Mike, Sonny. I know that I sure learned a whole lot more, even after having researched for our last episode. Is there any socials or programs you may want to plug, or final words you have for our body bequeathing buffs out there?
Oh, man, no, I really do want to just say thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. I know, research for a lot of people, and they hear the word research, and they're like, what does it even mean? And so, research affects all of us. It really does. Look at the phones in front of you, or the food you eat, or the lifestyle you live, and R&D had a place in all of that. It makes sure we stay safe, and we have the peak medical necessities that we are supposed to have, even though we have problems with that in America's obviously, and not going to get into that, but really my plug here for people is sign up to be a donor. It is the most selfless thing you can do. Once you're gone, it is a gift, and genuinely the most selfless thing you can do is to give that gift of life to someone else, to restore sight, or to restore mobility, or even to save that life with your heart or your lungs or your liver or something like that. And it's a little personal to me now, oddly, and makes me a little emotional, weirdly talking about it. But a family member of mine just became a heart recipient. Aww. And so, what made that possible for her was a donor and someone that made that selfless choice to sign up. And so they saved her life. So, go sign up if you, maybe I can plug. Donate Life America has a national registry. You can look that up online. It's DLA, Donate Life America. Or if you are in, just want to sign up on kind of through your state, you can reach out to any of your local OPOs or tissue procurement organization, and they will direct you in the right direction on how to do that. I don't think every state operates the same way, so little asterisk to that, but if you have that information on your driver's license that makes you a donor, it really does just help someone when you're gone. And what a more beautiful thing. So that's all I got. Really, just thank you both. I have me back. I'd love to come back. It was so much fun. So,
and we'd love to have you back. Thank you all again. And that's going to be it this week on Mort Mike. So connect with us on our socials at Facebook and YouTube at Mort Mike Podcast. And if you have any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear about, or burning questions you might have about death, shoot us an email at mortmikepodcast@gmail.com.
A huge thanks to Joey, our dedicated studio gopher, Marson Music for our theme Deputies of Death, and Macklin Legan for our custom icons and banners.
And be sure to tune in the first Thursday of every month for some more casual discussions on death. Thanks so much for listening. This has been Mort Mike. Bye.
Bye, creeps.